The Murim alliance demanded a final reckoning from the dying Jinson. As captain of the Sojung squad, he remembered every alliance secret. They feared his perfect memory falling into the demonic cult's hands. In the name of justice, they declared that he could not live. Jinson immediately understood the true motives of the warriors surrounding him. As his wounded body failed, they advanced without mercy. It was bitterly ironic to call him dangerous after the alliance had fallen. Scorning their cowardice, Jinson forced himself upright one last time. The dark battlefield silently witnessed the final moments of his life. Beneath the rain, every wound from his past reopened in his mind. Remembering everything had brought him endless torment instead of power. When the demonic cult attacked, Taeyul's weak disciples were sent forward. The alliance elites fled and left them behind as human shields. Jinson's young comrades died one by one to cover their retreat. Before withdrawing north, the alliance had offered him a deceitful bargain. If he memorized every secret record, the disciples would leave the front. Desperate to save those he loved, Jinson believed that lie. He spent countless nights engraving every archive page into his mind. Yet none of that effort saved anyone from death. He wondered whether he should have gone to the battlefield instead. Had he been there, he might have protected at least one disciple. He now knew he should have become stronger years ago. In fury, he cursed heaven for granting him only memory. As blood left his body, darkness slowly covered his eyes. At death's edge, his heart held nothing but burning regret. His final thought was that he would never remain powerless again. At that moment, an old pain suddenly returned to his body. A hard blow dragged him out of the darkness. Jinson felt warm earth strike his face and stared in shock. His chest ached, while his lungs breathed as they had years ago. When he looked up, he saw young faces he could never forget. He was standing in Taeyul's old training courtyard. The stone yard and surrounding buildings looked 30 years younger. Jinson assumed this was a vision before death. Yet the pain in his body felt far too real. The nearby disciples watched his strange behavior in confusion. The sight of a young Hong Sarian stole his breath. Sarian tried to understand why her senior was acting this way. Jumpio and the other disciples approached him with concern. Jinson recognized the friends he had lost long ago. Hearing their living voices shattered every defense around his heart. The younger disciples began to think their senior had lost his mind. Jinson trembled simply because he could see them again. He believed it was a beautiful memory appearing before his death. Then Gai Qileong's commanding voice shattered the peaceful illusion. Qileong threatened to beat the younger disciples unless Son took his sword. Jinson instantly remembered this spoiled heir from his past. The Jiryong Merchant Guild's money had made him untouchable inside the sect. Under the guise of training, Qileong mercilessly injured weaker disciples. Jinson welcomed the opportunity heaven had placed before him. He calmly rose to settle this old score. Seeing his courage, Qileong charged in fury. The crude sword strike tore harshly through the courtyard air. Jinson sensed its path before the blade even rose. It was the Samyang sword technique he had faced countless times. Every angle of the technique remained vivid in his perfect memory. Qileong aimed for his eyes to frighten him into submission. In the past, Jinson understood the attack but could not counter it. Now it looked childish beside the techniques of demonic masters. Jinson slipped aside with only a breath to spare. Qileong lost his balance in shock and exposed his guard. Jinson calmly turned the wooden sword in his hand. Countless techniques gathered over decades opened inside his mind. Finding the ideal counter took only an instant. He entered the basic stance of the Sokian sword arts. That simple step rendered Qileong's attack completely useless. Jinson silently slipped into his opponent's blind spot. The wooden sword struck Qileong's head like a heavy club. The long ridiculed Sokian technique proved its worth in the courtyard.
Leong could not believe such an ordinary art had defeated him.
Jin Sone released years of anger through every strike. The watching disciples erupted in delighted cheers. Leong tried to attack again, but had lost all control. Jin Sone read every movement before it began. One final strike knocked the spoiled heir to the ground. Leong threatened him by invoking his status as the guild heir. Jin Sone showed that the empty title no longer frightened him. For the first time, the young disciples saw their senior's true strength. Hong Serian rushed to Jin Sone in amazement. Everyone crowded around and celebrated his victory. Jin Sone still believed this was a dream before death. In his joy, he wanted to punish Leong a little more. Serian stopped him and insisted that the injuries were real. Only then did Jin Sone notice the pain still in his chest. The voices and warmth around him felt far more real than memory. A frightening possibility slowly formed inside his mind. He was not dying but truly living inside his younger body. His legs gave way in shock, and he collapsed. The disciples panicked and gathered around their senior. As Jin Sone closed his eyes, he clung to a single truth. This miracle gave him a chance to change everything he had lost. He had returned exactly 30 years into the past. Jin Sone opened his eyes inside the sect's infirmary. The moment of his death remained fresh and terrifying in his mind. He calmly arranged everything that had happened in order. The demonic cult's second rise had driven the alliance toward destruction. Taeyul's sect had also been almost completely erased in that war. Jin Sone had been ordered to memorize every book in the alliance. He believed the young disciples would be saved in return. Instead, the alliance feared his perfect memory and ultimately killed him. Now he had a miraculous chance to live the same life again. Using the martial arts in his memory, he had easily defeated Leong. His body and clothing were younger, but one possession remained unchanged. The blue dragon bracelet had traveled back with him. He had taken it from a demonic cult guardian as a trophy. He remembered the bracelet releasing a brilliant light before his death. The secret of his regression was likely hidden inside this mysterious object. Just then, angry shouting rose from outside. Leong's father, Guy Yansiak, had arrived to demand justice. Fearing the loss of guild support, the sect leaders bowed and apologized. Yansiak treated the blow against his son as a grave insult. He threatened to withdraw his support and forced everyone into silence. The sect leader promised that Jin Sone would receive severe punishment. Jin Sone would not accept the same humiliation in his second life. He calmly stepped forward and introduced himself with mocking politeness. Yansiak flew into a rage after learning this insolent boy beat Leong. Jin Sone had forgotten how small the age gap between them once was. Remembering his younger body, he quickly hid his smile. He dismissed the uproar over a single training blow. He implied that Leong could never enter Morim Academy in this condition. By recalling the injured disciples, he revealed who the true bully was. Yansiak claimed his son had lost through a dirty trick. Jin Sone told him to stop making excuses for an incompetent heir. The guild master again threatened to withdraw every bit of support. Taeyul was a third-rate sect that had lost its former glory. Even so, it remained one of the Murim Alliance's 108 peaks. That title allowed the sect to recommend one student without an examination. The Jurion Guild had funded Taeyul for years to secure that privilege. Leong had come to purchase the right of special admission. Jin Sone now turned the privilege's true value into leverage. He knew Yansiak could not easily make a deal with another sect. Less than a year remained before the special admission review. The guild therefore needed Taeyul more than Taeyul needed the guild. By taking responsibility, Jin Sone reversed the fear between them. He remembered how the guild they once served had ultimately abandoned them. Its support had ended the moment Leong entered the academy. This time, he accepted that begging would protect no one. Only his own strength could save him and those he loved.
Yanxiak's shouting now sounded like empty noise to Jinson.
The boy's eyes held the resolve of a man who had faced death. Jinson immediately began calculating ways to grow stronger.
Taeyuel's inefficient inner energy method would not be enough. He needed elixirs to gain immense inner energy in little time. The Alliance's secret book of elixirs remained complete in his memory. It recorded the locations of treasures scattered across the world. His first target was the 10,000-year fire ginseng. He reconstructed the hidden caves route one step at a time. However, a monstrous human-faced spider guarded the ginseng. The creature looked far more terrifying than its drawing in the book.
Believing one strike would finish it, Jinson raised his sword. He brought the Sokian technique down on its shell with full force. The hard armor repelled the blade and numbed his arm. He painfully accepted that his inner energy was still insufficient. The monster cornered its prey with poisonous webs. Jinson immediately understood that brute force would not win. Knowledge stored in memory mattered only when used correctly. He watched the spider's movements and deciphered its attack pattern. Pretending to retreat, he lured it toward the exact spot he wanted. The monster's webs formed a thick layer throughout the cave. At precisely the right moment, Jinson revealed his hidden flame. The highly flammable webs instantly turned into crimson fire. The spider writhed in the center of its own trap. Jinson knew victory was measured by results, not appearances. He charged through the flames and struck the monster's exposed weakness. The human-faced spider fell with a horrific scream. Ignoring anyone who might call the victory dirty, he approached the ginseng. The 10,000-year fire ginseng was finally in his hands. This elixir would strengthen his bones and rapidly increase his inner energy. For the first time, Jinson had used the past to change the future. Jinson swallowed the entire fire ginseng in one bite. Yet his body absorbed far less energy than he expected. The Taeyuel mind arts wasted most of the precious elixir. This weak method could never protect his sect from the coming war. When the Great War began, the powerless would again become shields. This time, he would not let the young disciples die needlessly. To protect them, he needed influence at the Alliance's center. The first step was entering Murim Academy. However, even passing the exam would be difficult with his current energy. Jinson realized he needed a stronger elixir immediately. He then remembered the elixir purchased for Guy Keeleon. The Jirion Guild would soon acquire Manhwa's Snow Plum Pill. In the past, this priceless pill had mysteriously been stolen. The thief was never caught, and every trace vanished. Since the crime had not happened yet, Jinson still had a chance. He knew that every person inevitably left a trail. He searched through every record memorized years later. Entry lists, mission reports, and suspicious names began to connect. His mind displayed countless documents like a vast library. Jinson arranged every detail by time and place. He uncovered hidden links among the scattered pieces of information. The thief's future escape route finally became clear in his mind. This time, his perfect memory would prove truly useful. He returned to the human-faced spider's core inside the cave. The blue dragon bracelet reacted to the monster's corrupted energy. As the dark power flowed into it, blue light filled the cave. Jinson stared in shock as such immense energy transferred. The demonic core began to purify inside the bracelet. Its poisonous energy transformed into pure inner energy. The cleansed power blended perfectly with the Taeyuel mind arts. The bracelet was more than the key to his regression. It was a terrifying treasure that absorbed and transferred living essence. Jinson finally felt that heaven had not entirely abandoned him. Yet witnesses might accuse him of practicing a forbidden art. He therefore decided to hide the bracelet's secret from everyone. Meanwhile, the city hosted a grand banquet for the Snow Plum Pill. Guests admired the fortune Yanxiak had spent on his son. Manhwa's pill strengthened both the body and inner energy.
Leon believed money could compensate for talent. The guests enjoyed free wine while laughing at his arrogance. Leon declared that only he deserved the precious pill. He believed the elixir guaranteed his future at Nurim Academy. Hong Serian sat quietly in thought amid the crowded banquet. She felt responsible for carrying the sect's future. Jin Seon stepping forward and taking every burden unsettled her. Moreover, Jin Seon had not returned to the sect for days. Serian wondered whether he feared retaliation from the guild. The young disciples brought food to cheer up their senior. Serian scolded them and told them to return to the dining hall. The children immediately realized she was thinking about Jin Seon. One disciple reminded her that she had eaten only once yesterday. Another wanted to save a piece of rice cake for their senior. Serian softened when she saw the meat Jin Seon liked. They decided to wait for his return and share the meal. The children's warmth briefly made them forget the sect's poverty. At that moment, Jin Seon entered the city to execute his plan. The crowded banquet offered the thief a perfect place to disappear. The snow plum pill was taken from its hidden box. A black-clad thief leaped across the rooftops and fled. Jin Seon followed the steps described in his memorized records. He predicted each street before the thief turned into it. He pursued silently across the dark rooftops. The fugitive believed no one could follow him. With the purple pill, he planned to gain immense power. The snow plum pill would let him use the heaven-piercing divine palm. Upon reaching his hidden refuge, he believed victory was certain. Then an unexpected shadow appeared before the door. Jin Seon had already calculated the chosen escape route. The thief stopped in shock and reached for his sword. Jin Seon promised to spare his life if he surrendered. The fugitive could not understand how this boy knew his secret. He hid the pill and tried to attack from the darkness. Jin Seon calmly watched his opponent's opening move. He recognized both the man's identity and technique from past records. The snow plum pill's thief could no longer hide in history's shadow. Jin Seon drew his sword to claim the precious elixir. The night suddenly lost its silence as the two warriors clashed. The snow plum pill's thieves were two of Jin Seon's 5 swords. Gu Ilmu and Jang Hangi had killed a man to conceal their trail. They secretly buried the soul-chasing guest's body in the forest. They planned to divide the stolen pill and quietly increase their strength. When they opened the box, the scent of plums filled the room. The two brothers began arguing over how to share a single pill. At that moment, the black-masked Jin Seon appeared before them. Their deadly trap had failed to keep him from following them. Jin Seon reminded them of the price for coveting another's property. The Dientsong warriors scorned the young intruder and drew their weapons. Jin Seon revealed that they were both thieves and murderers. Realizing he knew their crimes, the two men visibly tensed. They angrily warned him not to underestimate Diensong's swords. Jin Seon declared that the pill now belonged to him. He added that he would also find the soul-chasing guest's body. The masked youth's knowledge of every detail frightened the men. Still, they believed their sect's name would intimidate him. Jin Seon said belonging to a great sect did not erase murder. Gu Ilmu swung his sword and tried to cut away the mask. Jin Seon slipped beneath the strike and instantly countered. Jang Hangi attacked from the side to help his brother. The two swordsmen surrounded him and closed every escape route. Jin Seon knew their attack patterns from records written years later. When the snow plum pill vanished, the soul-chasing guest disappeared too. No new expert had suddenly emerged in the following months. He therefore knew that one person had not consumed the pill alone. He needed 2 warriors who had each gained a little power. Every clue in the records pointed to Gu Ilmu and Jang Hangi. Jin Seon calmly mocked them as he explained his deduction. With their identities exposed, the brothers attacked savagely. They threatened alliance retaliation and demanded that he retreat. Jin Seon replied that one thief could not frighten another. He moved nimbly between their blades and neutralized each strike. Blinded by rage, Gu Ilmu triggered the first trap on the ground. The blast tore into his leg and completely destroyed his balance. Jang Hangi panicked at his brother's scream and leaped backward. Jin Son had turned his hunting traps into a battlefield. The brothers called him a trickster rather than a swordsman. For Jin Son, only victory mattered. The wounded Gu Ilmu vowed to tear away his mask and kill him. Pretending to flee, Jin Son drew them deeper among the trees. Driven by vengeance, Jang Hangi followed without thinking. Gu Ilmu warned his brother to be careful at the last moment. Countless traps lay hidden beneath leaves across the forest floor. Jin Son had deliberately left his footprints visible. The two warriors believed following the same prints would keep them safe. Jang Hangi carefully copied every step ahead of him. After passing several traps, he laughed, believing he understood the trick. Gu Ilmu began following his brother with renewed confidence. Yet Jin Son's steps accounted for weight as well as direction. He stepped fully on some stones and barely touched the edges of others. Tiny differences in the brothers' weight were enough to break the pattern. Hidden mechanisms activated together and fired arrows from the ground. As Gu Ilmu tried to escape, a second trap seized his foot. Jang Hangi charged in fury and stepped on another trap. The explosion hurled him through the air and slammed him down. The two masters shouted that no one could cross such a dense trap field. Jin Son returned before them with flawless steps. He repeated each earlier footfall with hairbreadth precision. The brothers turned pale before such extraordinary accuracy. Jin Son reflected on the soul gift heaven had granted him. The ability he once cursed had become a deadly weapon. When the final trap activated, both criminals were completely helpless. Jin Son took the snow plum pill and silently left the forest. Meanwhile, other schemes unfolded at the Muram Alliance headquarters. Chief strategist Jigul Sumyong assessed the alliance's balance of power. Namgung elder Taewon calmly drank tea across from him. They discussed several sects that had rapidly risen around Hefei. Taewon implied that the 108 peaks should now change. His target was Taeyul sect, which had lost its former strength. He wanted Iron Sword sect elevated in its place. Jigul Sumyong said such a change required serious justification. Namgung Taewon cited the rumors circulating about Taeyul. The sect was accused of selling its special admission privilege. The support purchased for Kielion gave substance to the accusation. Taewon argued that Taeyul had turned its privileges into personal profit. Sumyong silently recognized the political intention behind the claim. Backed by Namgung, Iron Sword sect wanted to replace Taeyul. Jin Son still knew nothing about this secret meeting. Yet the source of his past humiliation was being prepared here. As the snow plum pill strengthened him, his enemies also began moving. His second life's first major political battle had quietly begun. Jin Son would face it with both his sword and his memory. Namgung Taewon skillfully spread rumors to discredit Taeyul. Chief strategist Sumyong silently weighed the intentions behind the tea. Taewon argued that Iron Sword was the stronger candidate. Taeyul's removal from the 108 peaks was now a real threat. Meanwhile, Jin Son prepared the snow plum pill in a secure room. The elixir's rich fragrance filled the room as soon as the box opened. Jin Son swallowed the pill and guided its energy through every meridian. A blue current began forming rings around his body. Purified energy rapidly spread through his bones and vessels. For the first time, immense power nourished the Taeyul mind arts. Jin Son steadied his breathing and gathered the energy into one point. The snow plum pill truly deserved its reputation. His inner energy crossed half a cycle and renewed his young body. He had already surpassed the level reached in his past life. This progress gave him confidence he had not felt in years. However, the bracelet's ability to absorb energy seemed far more dangerous. It could draw out living essence and convert it into his own energy. The power closely resembled the Alliance's forbidden art of energy absorption. If exposed, both he and his sect would face condemnation.
Jin Seon resolved to leave no trace whenever he used the bracelet. When he emerged from
days of seclusion, hunger left him barely standing.
Relieved to see him, the innkeeper asked where he had been.
Hearing the kitchen was closed, Jin Seon produced a pouch of money.
He paid a full week of lodging and meals in advance.
The money quickly roused even the sleeping cook.
A wide variety of hot dishes soon appeared before him. Jin Seon reached for every plate with a tremendous appetite. The blue dragon bracelet had also given him a way to earn money. The spider's valuable hide and parts had brought him a small fortune. The innkeeper began describing the city's great elixir theft. The snow plum pill had vanished in the middle of the banquet. The Murim Alliance sent investigators to find the thief. Jin Seon nearly choked on his water when he heard the news. It was ironic that they searched elsewhere while the culprit sat before them.
He anxiously asked whether they had found any evidence.
The innkeeper said the Alliance had completely lost the thief's trail. Relieved, Jin Seon returned to his meal. He learned that the interrupted banquet had also cost the inn customers.
However, an even larger celebration would soon begin. Iron Sword sect's leader was celebrating his 60th birthday.
The 7-day banquet would draw the entire region to Hefei.
The news awakened a dark memory inside Jin Seon.
In his past life, his father Jin Tae-san had attended that banquet.
Every Tae-yul elder had been humiliated before the crowded hall.
His father was forced to kneel before Iron Sword's leader. Tae-san apologized publicly for his son's mistakes. Jin Seon had carried the shame of that image for years. Because of him, his father had bowed his head and swallowed his pride. He could not allow the same scene in his second life. At first, avoiding the banquet entirely seemed like the easiest solution. If he stayed away, his father would not need to apologize. Yet Iron Sword would continue crushing Tae-yul through other means. Running away would only delay the humiliation. Jin Seon no longer wanted to hide from his past. This time, he would truly protect his father and the entire sect. Having decided, he descended the inn stairs late at night. His money and new inner energy gave him unexpected courage. Still, he had to account for the Namgung support behind Iron Sword. One mistake could cost Tae-yul its place among the 108 peaks. Jin Seon replayed every past event in his mind. He now clearly remembered where the banquet's insults would begin. This time, Tae-yul would not be the humiliated side. Jin Seon vowed never to let his father bow again. The disciples of Tae-yul sect spent their days in grueling training. Jumpio and his fellow disciple gasped after hundreds of downward strikes. Even so, they were determined to learn Jin Seon's Sokian technique. Their senior's long absence had begun to worry everyone. Some thought he had fled in fear of the guild's retaliation. Others said he might have abandoned the sect entirely. Just as hope faded, a familiar silhouette appeared at the gate. Jin Seon had finally returned safely from his long journey. The young disciples rushed over and crowded around him. Everyone wanted him to teach the move that defeated Kileong. Their warm welcome moved Jin Seon deeply. Then an angry man pushed through the crowd toward him. He was Jin Tae-san, master of Tae-yul's outer hall. After 30 years, Jin Seon was seeing his father again. Tae-san scolded his son for disappearing without a word. Jin Seon suddenly embraced the father he had missed for decades. Tae-san did not know how to respond to this unexpected affection. His father's warmth made the reality of Jin Seon's second life undeniable. Then Dai Kileong's angry voice interrupted the emotional moment. Kileong challenged him again to avenge his earlier defeat. Jin Seon realized he did not know the snow plum pill was stolen. He decided to act frightened and conceal his new inner energy. He mocked the brilliant energy that Kileong could not stop admiring. The young heir had no idea where Seon's true power came from. Hong Serian intervened and stopped the pointless fight. Though angry over his disappearance,
she was relieved he had returned.
The younger disciples brought sweets and taffy for their senior. With his earnings, Jin-seon had bought plenty of food for them all. Sarian scolded him, saying rice should come before treats. The poor children's happiness still filled the entire courtyard.
Sarian took out the rice cake.
She had kept for days. She had saved it at the banquet to share with Jin-seon. The small kindness touched him more deeply than he expected. He ate it in one bite and praised its flavor extravagantly. As Sarian blushed, the other disciples demanded their share. Jin-seon gave them his portion of the sweets. Then he asked Sarian about Iron Sword's banquet. His face grew serious when he learned the sect had accepted. There was no longer time to find a convincing excuse. Jin-seon first considered going alone to protect the others. Yet Iron Sword would send new invitations at every opportunity. Constantly fleeing would allow the insults to continue forever. Jin-seon finally chose to face the enemy inside its own hall. Several days later, Tae-yul's delegation departed for Hefei. As Tae-san walked in silence, he considered his son's sudden transformation. Jin-seon noticed his father's unease and tried to speak with him. Kweowa Hall Master Kong Chae-seok led the delegation. Chae-seok warned Jin-seon not to cause trouble under any circumstances. Jin-seon said he wanted no fight if others left him alone. The hall master considered even that answer disrespectful and grew angry. Tae-san silently concealed his concern while trying to protect his son. As they approached the banquet, the road became congested. A group ahead claimed the route and pushed Tae-yul aside. Despite the long journey's exhaustion, Chae-seok tried to remain calm. The opposing man introduced himself as Gu Yangsa of Chongjuk Manor. He expected his name to frighten everyone in the region. His companions mocked Tae-yul as a third-rate sect. Jin-seon deliberately mispronounced Chongjak's name. The arrogance on Gu Yangsa's face instantly turned to fury. Jin-seon knew him well from his past life. Yangsa would later join the Jirion Guild in persecuting Tae-yul. He was among the tyrants who treated its disciples like servants. Jin-seon therefore had no intention of bowing before him. Gu Yangsa repeated his name and demanded respect. Jin-seon merely shrugged as if he had never heard it. The surrounding crowd nervously watched the approaching fight. Gu Yangsa's men reached for their weapons and blocked the road. Chae-seok tried to pull Jin-seon back before matters escalated. Years of swallowed insults returned before Jin-seon's eyes. Just before the clash began, the crowd silently parted. A young woman in magnificent clothing approached from afar. Everyone instantly recognized her as Iron Sword's beautiful wolf. Song Moran was the host's granddaughter and a powerful swordswoman. Whispers said the blood wolf Iron Sword was with her. Gu Yangsa's arrogance vanished the moment Moran arrived. She asked why the two groups were fighting in the road. Her gaze settled directly on Jin-seon. He remembered her dangerous reputation from his past life. Song Moran said she would not allow bloodshed at her grandfather's banquet. One look from her forced Gu Yangsa's men to withdraw. Yet Jin-seon's defiant manner had already captured her interest. Before the banquet even began, Tae-yul had drawn every eye. Iron Sword sect had been founded only 150 years ago. Even so, its influence in Hefei rapidly overshadowed Tae-yul. Two great sword sects could not exist beneath the same sky. Iron Sword's true goal was joining the 108 Peaks. To achieve that, it needed to take Tae-yul's place. Jin-seon remembered attending this same birthday banquet in the past. At the gathering of young warriors, he met Blood Wolf Son Mohyun. Mohyun scorned him and forced him into a public duel. Jin-seon accepted despite knowing he would lose. His father knelt before the sect leader to stop that duel. Now the same shameful scene threatened to unfold again. This time, however, Jin-seon was no frightened youth. Song Moran ended the tension on the road with a single word. She forced Gu Yangsa back into line and protected Tae-yul's place.
Then she politely apologized to the delegation for arriving late. She surprised everyone by offering to escort them inside personally. Moran received their praise with a composed smile. Jin-seon remembered no connection between her and Tae-yul before. He concluded that his own changes had caused this unexpected help. Still, he suspected that Moran might have a hidden purpose. The children marveled at Iron Sword's magnificent estate. Jin-seon searched for traps behind its ostentatious walls. Moran led them all the way into the crowded banquet hall. Sect leader Seon Cheonwol sat at the highest point. Beside him was his heir and Moran's father, Song Jutak. Guy Yeonseok loudly greeted his old friends. Song Jutak praised Kileon as an overlooked genius. He said he would accept the boy directly without the peak's privilege. He mockingly added that Tae-yul did not deserve such wealth. Kang Chae-seok formally introduced himself and Jin Tae-san. Seon Cheonwol reminded Tae-san of an incident 20 years earlier. Then he contemptuously asked about Tae-yul's leader. He easily recognized Sarian as the leader's daughter. Turning to Jin-seon, he examined him from head to toe. He called Seon's inner energy mediocre and his talent pitiful. He openly mocked the disciples carrying Tae-yul's hopes. He argued that giving all their resources to Kileon would be wiser. Song Jutak added that Tae-yul's arts would make him a street fighter. Jin-seon tried to listen to every insult in silence. Yet their arrogance rapidly exhausted his patience. He compared Song Jutak to a filthy back-alley thug. The hall fell into deadly silence the moment the words escaped. Jin-seon had spoken aloud. The insult meant only for his thoughts. Song Jutak furiously demanded that he repeat himself. Instead of retreating, Jin-seon explained why Jutak had angered him. Jutak had addressed Tae-yul's leader disrespectfully, like an old drinking companion. Measuring another person's inner energy without permission was also deeply rude. Worse, he had insulted Tae-yul's arts without understanding them. Jin-seon said no one could remain calm after so many insults. He invoked the Righteous Path's teachings and apologized with obvious irony. His fearless manner astonished the guests throughout the hall. Song Moran covered her face to hide her laughter. Song Jutak angrily shouted that he rejected the apology. Jin-seon calmly acknowledged that his apology had been refused. Just as swords were about to be drawn, major news arrived. Nurim Alliance chief strategist Jigul Sumyeon had reached the banquet. Seon Cheonwol and every dignitary rushed outside to welcome him. The Jirion Guild hurried after them with its gifts. Most guests poured outside to impress the powerful visitor. Jin-seon refused to participate in such a display. Tae-yul's delegation first decided to find its seats inside. Tae-san asked why his son had behaved so recklessly. Jin-seon explained that Jutak wanted to force them to draw swords. Tae-san had noticed the same trap and prepared to intervene. Iron Sword wanted to provoke an incident and blame Tae-yul. Understanding his father's thoughts, Jin-seon bowed respectfully. When asked about the dispute 20 years ago, Tae-san delayed the answer. Song Moran reappeared and led them to a private section. Their table overlooking Emerald Lake was among the hall's finest. Dishes from mountain and sea, normally beyond them, filled the table. The Tae-yul disciples could not understand such generosity. Jin-seon directly tried to uncover Moran's purpose. Moran said women were excluded from important affairs, so she stayed inside. Her brother Song Mulhyan had grown up consuming every available resource. Despite starting late, Moran had displayed extraordinary talent with the sword. At Nurim Academy, she achieved the same success as her brother. Some considered the beautiful wolf's sword sharper than the blood wolf's. Hearing Jin-seon list these facts only deepened Moran's interest. She teased him for paying such close attention to her. Then she apologized again for her father's rudeness. Jin-seon directly asked why Iron Sword had invited Tae-yul. Moran avoided the question by praising crowded banquets.
Jin-seon reminded her that history held many banquet assassinations.
Impressed by his sharp instincts, Moran left the table.
In the corridor, she quickly escaped the admirers following her. Among the crowd, only Jin-seon had never bowed his head. She wondered whether he was truly brave or completely insane.
Then she noticed Kyeoleong and Sarian secretly going somewhere.
She recalled her brother's drinking gathering for the young warriors. Realizing Jin-seon was not with them, her curiosity grew stronger.
Song Moran decided to pursue this entertaining mystery. Song Moran visited Jin-seon's room at night and invited him out.
A private drinking table awaited the younger generation. After the long day, Jin-seon politely declined.
Moran wanted to ensure that every Taeyul disciple was truly resting.
She specifically mentioned seeing Sarian heading toward the gathering. Jin-seon immediately remembered the duel from his past.
Back then, Mohyun's provocation made him accept the challenge.
His father and sect were later forced to conceal the incident in shame. In this life, he tried to avoid the same fate by staying away.
Yet he could not leave Sarian alone inside a prepared trap. He told Moran that Iron Sword might be luring its guests into an ambush. Angered by the accusation, Moran considered him paranoid.
Jin-seon pointed to her father Jutak's behavior as evidence.
Moran had to admit that important plans were hidden from women.
Perhaps she truly knew nothing of her sect's dirty intentions. Like a prophet, Jin-seon described the incident about to unfold.
Song Mohyun would inevitably try to humiliate Taeyul at the gathering.
Even if they retreated, the blood wolf would not stop.
Moran accused Jin-seon of being an obsessive madman. Jin-seon replied that he sincerely hoped he was wrong. Together, they entered the great hall where the young warriors gathered. The men of Changjuk Manor were belittling the 108 peaks. They said the old sects should be drained away like stagnant water. They argued that Taeyul did not deserve special admission rights. Hong Sarian silently endured the insults before everyone. Believing she could not answer, the speakers grew more insolent.
Just as they turned their words toward Jin-seon, the door opened. Arriving beside Song Moran, Jin-seon drew every gaze.
Kyeoleong jumped to his feet when he saw his senior.
Jin-seon calmly requested another drinking table.
Then he accused Kyeoleong of drinking while his sect was insulted. He said Kyeoleong had done nothing worthy of a senior.
Sarian barely stopped the two from fighting again. Jin-seon then asked why she had come here. Sarian admitted she had taken his place, fearing he would cause trouble. Two young men watched the argument with detached interest. One was Namgung-san, the Namgung clan's awakened heavenly dragon. The other was the gathering's host, Blood Wolf Song Mohyun.
Mohyun finally turned toward Jin-seon and took control.
He asked whether Son had come to speak for Taeyul. Jin-seon agreed that stagnant water should be drained. But he added that the water replacing it must also be clean. As an example, he described Changjuk Manor's bloody history. The Manor's brothers had slaughtered one another for control. The reason such a group never joined the peaks was obvious. Jin-seon said he could never turn his back on them in war. The Changjuk disciples rose furiously at mention of their family's past. Gu Yangsa reached for his sword and called it a grave insult. Jin-seon replied that every word was publicly known fact. Song Moran defended him, noting that Changjuk provoked them first. Mohyun ordered his sister silent and seized control of the dispute. Fearing Jin-seon would lose his temper, Sarian intervened. Instead, Jin-seon unexpectedly apologized to Gu Yangsa. He said he had no excuse for spoiling the pleasant gathering. Sarian was forced to bow with him. They turned to leave before the tension rose any further. Jin-seon believed he had finally prevented the past duel. Song Mohyun, however, refused to let them leave. He said they could not insult a guest on his land and flee. Iron Sword's honor could not be restored by a simple apology.
As the sect leader's grandson, Mohyun would deliver punishment himself.
Before everyone, he formally challenged Jin-seon to a duel. Jin-seon realized fate had returned to the same point. Neither fleeing nor resisting had prevented this confrontation. Sarian clutched his arm and begged him to refuse. Jin-seon could break the past's chain only by winning this time. Under the blood wolf's gaze, he silently reached for his sword. Sarian knew Iron Sword's heir was no ordinary bully. She feared Jin-seon would trust his victory over Kieleong and die. One strike from the giant sword could end the young warrior's life. Despite her tears, Jin-seon assured her that he had a plan. He tried to calm her by asking her to focus on celebrating his victory. Tae-san did not tell his son to abandon the mad duel either. Jin-seon asked his father to trust him just once. Tae-san angrily agreed, but could not hide his worry. The next day, Iron Sword's central courtyard was completely full. Sarian arrived in panic and reported that his father had disappeared. Saying he expected this, Jin-seon headed for the training ground. Hundreds of guests had already gathered in the central arena. The crowd discussed how a Taeyul disciple had insulted Iron Sword. Most considered Jin-seon an arrogant child blind to reality. A rumor spread that his father Tae-san was apologizing in his place. People said Seon Cheonwol might show mercy and forgive the offense. Chief strategist Sumyeon silently watched this public trial. He realized Iron Sword was determined to remove Taeyul from the peaks. Jin Tae-san knelt in the arena's center with his forehead lowered. He claimed that his son had committed a crime deserving death. Jin-seon forced through the crowd and angrily reached his father. He demanded to know what crime justified this humiliation. Song Jutak said only that their sect had been insulted. Seon Cheonwol mockingly remarked that father and son looked alike. Before everyone, he recalled another incident from 20 years earlier. Jin-seon furiously asked why his father was kneeling. Tae-san was willing to do anything to save his son. Jin-seon said no child should ever see his father crushed this way. Tae-san ordered him back without lifting his eyes. Song Jutak praised this paternal love with false sentimentality. He said Jin-seon's father was bowing to keep him alive. Then he ordered Seon to kneel beside him. Jin-seon reminded everyone that he had already accepted the challenge. From that moment, his father's apology meant nothing. Tae-san looked helplessly into his son's face. Jin-seon wanted to prove that his resolve was more than words. He asked his father to watch and trust him. Faced with his son's determination, Tae-san finally withdrew. Song Mohyun entered with his heavy sword as cheers erupted. For years, Iron Sword had devoted every resource to him. His art was built around crushing weight and destructive force. Jin-seon knew Sokyeon's agile steps held a natural advantage. His first goal was to pressure his opponent with speed. When Mohyun swung his giant sword, the arena floor shattered. Jin-seon slipped from the strike like a thin shadow. Then he moved beside his opponent and delivered a swift slash. Mohyun turned his guard and met it with the greatsword. The collision hurled Jin-seon several steps backward. Mohyun mocked him for fleeing like a rat. Jin-seon increased his speed and attacked from changing angles. Yet the greatsword's wind kept him from closing in. The crowd began to believe the Taeyul disciple was losing ground. Song Mohyun declared that this was the Sokyeon sword art's limit. Jin-seon knew the fight had only begun. Mohyun started telling the story of an old enemy of his family. Years ago, a man from a worthless sect challenged his father. The man refused to submit to Iron Sword and claimed his innocence. As punishment, every disciple was branded with a heated blade. The man's name was finally revealed as Jin Tae-san. Jin-seon now understood the truth behind his father's hidden scar. Mohyun's greatsword descended mercilessly again. Suppressing his anger, Jin-seon leaped aside at the last instant. As Tae-san shouted, the shame of his past returned to his eyes.
The crowd believed father and son would be crushed the same way.
Jin-seon would not bury this humiliation beneath a false smile.
Mohyun's heavy strikes split the arena one after another.
With every escape, Jin-seon's breathing grew heavier. The spectators now thought this was punishment, not a duel.
Iron Sword's disciples mocked Tae-yul's pitiful condition.
Jin-seon realized they all expected history to repeat itself.
Mohyun declared that the third-rate disciple had reached his limit.
At that moment, Jin-seon changed the rhythm of his Sokian steps. His sword slipped past the heavy strike from an unexpected angle.
For the first time, Mohyun retreated without seeing the attack.
Jin-seon circulated inner energy through his meridians more quickly. The power gained through the blue dragon bracelet awakened inside him.
Mohyun shouted that this was a cheap trick.
Jin-seon had paid far too dearly for weakness in his past life. He had therefore vowed to grow stronger every day. His goal was not merely victory, but changing fate's outcome. With his next step, he completely crossed Mohyun's sword range.
The Sokian blade entered the giant weapon's blind spot.
For the first time, superiority vanished from Mohyun's face. Jin-seon asked whether this was Iron Sword's true strength.
As the arena fell silent, the duel's balance suddenly reversed.
This time, Jin-seon would be the one to write history's ending. Resolve burned in his eyes as he raised his sword for the final attack. An Iron Sword elder marveled at the sharpness of Tae-yul's sword. He immediately sensed that Seon's superiority was no accident. The spectators could not believe young Master Mohyun was being overwhelmed. His supporters blamed the defeat on dust rising through the arena. Seon considered the ancient hatred between the two sections. Winning this duel alone would not solve the problem. He had to break the vicious cycle that continued for years. Driven mad by fury, Mohyun attacked with all his strength. Seon deflected the savage blow at the final moment. Then he flashed to his opponent's side. As steel collided, a harsh sound echoed across the arena. Mohyun still refused to accept the power before him. Seon saw only one decisive solution. He told his opponent to wait and raised his guard again. From that day forward, he would completely change the balance. Seon's sudden move sliced through the air. The heavy blade missed its target and struck the earth. Seon would make Iron Sword kneel before Tae-yul. That resolve opened the duel's second act. The crowd silently watched Mohyun rise in fury. The young warrior's face twisted with humiliation. Seon's cold gaze left him nowhere to escape. Mohyun struggled to raise his sword again. The two clashed once more at the arena's center. Yet every one of Mohyun's attacks was read in advance. He had trusted his title, the Blood Wolf Iron Sword. For years, he had sworn to prove his sword. Now he could not endure losing to someone he considered weak. With a furious roar, he unleashed strike after strike. Seon slipped between the attacks like a shadow. One counter sent Mohyun flying backward again. His opponent's balance and breathing collapsed together. Even lifting his sword had become difficult for Mohyun. Seon exposed the weakness in his inner energy training. That calm judgment wounded Mohyun's pride even more. He did not know precious elixirs had strengthened Seon. Mohyun could not believe he was inferior in inner energy. Refusing to accept it, he attacked again. Seon's superiority became clearer with every movement. Mohyun suddenly remembered their earlier contact. He believed his energy had become disrupted after that touch. A terrifying possibility formed inside his mind. He shouted that Seon was using a dark art. He accused him of a forbidden technique in serving the demonic cult. The weight of the accusation instantly silenced the crowd. The old sect leader's eyes hardened. Mohyun turned to his grandfather and demanded help. Seon stood motionless before the accusation. Mohyun repeated his claim with absolute certainty. He named the technique as the art of energy absorption. Seon explained that pure skill had won the duel. His opponent had reached for dark arts only after losing. Such behavior was unworthy of Iron Sword. Son's words echoed across the entire arena. The chief strategist wondered how the incident would unfold. The crowd blamed the confrontation on jealousy. They knew a false accusation could destroy all of Taeyul. Mohyun's outburst shattered his own sect's reputation. Still, the young man refused to retreat from his anger. He said he had never lost to anyone his age. Therefore, only a dark art could explain his defeat. He described feeling his energy disrupted throughout the duel. If his accusation was false, he would accept any punishment. When his speech ended, he stood gasping for breath. The sect leader declared the duel over. Son objected because the result had already been decided. The old man demanded to inspect his body over the accusation. Son openly questioned his attempt to crush a small sect. The leader angrily asked whether Son called his grandson a liar. Son demanded to know the price if he proved innocent. That question cornered the sect leader even further. The old man accused Son of making himself look suspicious. Then he threatened to punish everyone in Taeyul. Son urged his father and sect leader to remain behind him. His elderly opponent harshly ordered the child to step back. Son said no father should send his child to die first. Enraged, the man vowed to cut off Taeyul's lifeline. He gripped his sword hilt with all his strength. Everyone watched the approaching clash in horror. Just before he attacked, an authoritative voice stopped him. That single command plunged the entire arena into silence. The chief strategist lightly descended into the arena. He ordered everyone to put away their weapons. Iron Sword's leader hesitated when he recognized him. The chief strategist admitted that he had intervened too late. Son, however, had still not lowered his sword. The chief strategist asked the young man what he wanted. Son wanted the head of Iron Sword's leader. The old man gritted his teeth at this audacity. Such a demand meant a duel to the death. If Son died, he would become a martyr for his sect. Iron Sword's tyranny would remain an eternal political stain. The chief strategist studied Son's move with interest. The young man had wagered his life on his innocence. Now he wanted his opponent to wager the sect's signboard. The leader defended investigating forbidden arts as his duty. He declared that he would answer only with his sword. The chief strategist immediately accepted that reply. But he asked the leader to wager his divine weapon. Even Son was surprised by this unexpected proposal. The heirloom in question was the 9-layered sword. The chief strategist was clearly provoking the old leader deliberately. The old man did not want to surrender his priceless heirloom. Nevertheless, he finally accepted the terms of the examination. The chief strategist gathered inner energy in his palm. Then he carefully grasped Son's wrist. The dantian of an energy absorption practitioner was distinctive. Countless stolen energies would remain mixed together inside it. Finding such traces in Son would prove the accusation. The chief strategist's energy quietly circulated through his vessels. The man narrowed his eyes at what he discovered. Son's dantian was entirely clean and balanced. He publicly declared that Son had learned no forbidden art. The definitive judgment stirred the arena once more. The confidence vanished from Iron Sword's leader's face. Mohyun shouted that the verdict was a lie. His supporters insisted Taeyul could win no other way. The old leader rushed forward to verify it himself. No one had time to stop him. He seized Son's wrist with brutal force. Uncontrolled energy flooded violently into the young man's body. The chief strategist immediately questioned the elder's intentions. But the examination had already become a vicious attack. Son struggled to remain conscious beneath the pressure. The bracelet drew the attacking energy into itself. Bloody wounds opened across the old leader's palm. Iron Sword's great master recoiled in pain. Son demanded that he answer for his actions. The price of this disgraceful behavior would not be light. The crowd froze before the young man's unbreakable resolve. The guilt belonged not only to the elder, but to his descendants. The old leader silently stared at his blood-covered hand. Son demanded that the proper price be paid now. Yet his own body had also reached its limit. After spending his final strength, he fell to his knees. His companions shouted his name and rushed toward him. Even Senior Jin Tae-san waited beside him in fear. The chief strategist reminded the sect leader of his promise. The old man had to accept defeat through clenched teeth. Son lost consciousness completely. Later, he was carried into a quiet guest room. Knocking at the door disturbed his sleep. Son opened his eyes and tried to understand his surroundings. Recognizing the visitor, he recoiled in shock. Iron Sword sect's leader himself had come. Son sat up and studied the unexpected guest. The old man asked whether Son's performance was finally over. That question began the true reckoning between them. The old leader unraveled the scheme Son had built around him. Son had cleared his name while earning the chief strategist's trust. Even the blood he coughed came from biting his own cheek. The old man considered this flawless calculation in amazement. At last, he asked when the plan had begun. Son met the question with a quiet, measured gaze. For a moment, the tension in the room deepened. The old leader grew impatient while awaiting an answer. Son still stood before him without speaking. The man sharply asked whether he had forgotten how to talk. Son's eyes moved toward the black chest in the room. Its lid concealed the reward waiting inside. Son asked about the promised 9-layered sword. He said he wanted to inspect the heirloom immediately. His eagerness caught the old man unprepared. Smiling, Son reached toward the chest. The old leader first wanted an answer to his question. Son jokingly wondered how much the sword might fetch at market. The old man's face tightened at such insolence. Son said he had not planned everything very long ago. It had begun with the strangely unnecessary banquet invitation. If Iron Sword provoked a conflict, he intended to crush its arrogance. The old leader realized Son had even predicted the duel with Mohyun. He wondered how Son had prepared the forbidden art accusation. Son said revealing anything further would bring him no benefit. In return for the sword, he had answered only one question. People spent fortunes for a meeting with the old man. Son reminded him that they expected even greater returns. He implied that such a return did not exist for him. Then he cheerfully stood and prepared to leave. With no more questions, he would continue on his way. The old leader stopped him once again. He repeated his question about predicting Mohyun's accusation. An unreadable smile appeared on Son's face. Without the chief strategist, he might have been branded guilty. Son said examining his corpse would have proven his innocence. Tae-yul's honor would therefore have survived anyway. The old man was shocked he risked his life for something insignificant. Those words instantly changed the room's atmosphere. Sharp anger filled Son's eyes. He could not accept Tae-yul's honor being called insignificant. If Jegal traditions held value, Tae-yul's traditions did as well. Son said his small sect carried the same pride. The old man remained silent for a long moment. Son did not retreat a single step from his conviction. Suddenly, the old leader burst into laughter. He said the young man had thoroughly entertained him. Son finally understood the old man's strange reputation. The old leader decided to grant him a second gift. A small, engraved token appeared in his palm. Son sensed its importance as he studied it. The token bypassed the academy exam known as Hell itself. It granted unconditional entry into Murim Academy. Normally, only the 108 peaks held this privilege. Son stared in shock at the admission token in his hand. Such a valuable opportunity could redirect all his plans.
The old leader watched his reaction with amusement. He said the Manton office would soon become very lively.
Son committed this new mystery to memory. The Iron Sword estate looked peaceful the following day.
Song Moran walked thoughtfully through the garden.
She could not drive the duel's events from her mind. She remembered Son's words in the face of those threats. She considered how he silenced everyone accusing him. The proper price Iron Sword owed returned to her thoughts. Her sect could not behave like common street thugs.
Moran stood alone beneath the purple flowers. Son suddenly approached and asked why she was alone. Moran jumped and released a startled cry.
Son waited before her with a calm smile. Blushing, Moran criticized him for being far too reckless. Moran knew this gift could not erase her sect's wrongdoing. Still, she hoped the two sides might grow closer. The box held a steel protection pill reserved for direct descendants. This spiritual medicine surpassed even the Iron Heart pill. Moran said she hoped their next meeting would bring smiles. Then she hesitantly tried to add something else. Son thanked her and answered with a warm smile. Moran shared the same hope and tried to hide her embarrassment. Purple petals drifted silently between them. Several days later, Son finally returned to Taeyul. The disciples shouted his name in delight. The crowd immediately swarmed him and knocked him down. Every young disciple wanted a closer look at Senior Jean. They all began calling to Son at once. They competed for a glimpse of the nine-layered sword. Tae-san also approached his senior brother excitedly. Noticing his serious face, Son asked what was wrong. Tae-san confessed that he once regretted joining Taeyul. People said the weak Sokian sword arts could never take him far. Back then, he had no answer to those insults. Now, however, he felt proud to be Taeyul's disciple. He knew Son had made that pride possible. Tae-san promised to train even harder in the Sokian sword arts. He would become a far greater disciple of Taeyul. He would advance like the senior brother he admired. Son shook his hand and said he looked forward to his growth. Hong Sarian had lost sleep after hearing about Iron Sword. Taeyul's leader, Hong Meng, then entered the courtyard. He sincerely congratulated everyone on their success. For 150 years, Iron Sword had humiliated them. He carried shame over Taeyul's weakness and his own failures. Now Son had closed that long wound alone. A child's achievement left him both grateful and ashamed. Son's father wanted to celebrate the great success. The leader warned that a feast would consume 6 months of funds. Son's father refused to treat honor as an ordinary matter. Hong Meng reminded him that honor could not fill empty stomachs. Even so, his insistence grew fierce enough to wager his head. Everyone watched the argument escalate in shock. At last, the elders agreed to contribute their own money. Once every pouch opened, they had enough for a feast. Hong Meng regretted showing off as he thanked them. Son asked his father whether the feast was truly happening. His father pretended never to have heard the word feast. He blamed his age and claimed his hearing had weakened. He calculated that the money could provide meat at every meal. When Son asked where he was going, his father headed for the door. Naturally, he was going wherever the money was. The master of Wang family manor was consumed by fury. Someone had dared to kidnap his only daughter. He ordered the criminals dragged before him immediately. He promised a great reward to anyone returning her safely. The news quickly spread throughout the region. The manor gates opened for every arriving messenger. Portraits of the missing young woman appeared everywhere. The opportunity Son had awaited finally stood before him. He reviewed every relevant detail from his past. Taeyul begging merchants for money was no solution. The treacherous Jirion Merchant Guild demanded payment for every favor. The sect needed a genuine and lasting sponsor. The strongest bond could be forged through sincere gratitude.
That support had to justify severing their old merchant ties. It needed to end Taeyul's constant financial troubles completely. The Wang family's reward was the white knight he needed. Son remembered past cases around Hefei and Lake Chao. He isolated every report involving a young girl. One report mentioned an unidentified, beheaded body. The corpse had been buried near an old forest cabin. Son finally found the cabin in the darkness. Celebrating his timely arrival, he heard voices inside. The kidnappers discovered that the girl's body burned like a furnace. They had no idea what caused the sudden fever. Their superiors had ordered them to erase all evidence if they failed. They therefore decided to kill and bury the girl. One man raised his sword without mercy. The blade descended swiftly toward the defenseless girl. Son intervened at the final instant and stopped the strike. His counterattack hurled the man from the cabin. The other kidnappers drew their swords. Son passed among them as if invisible. The short battle left every attacker on the ground. Only the wounded girl remained inside the cabin. Wang Soso opened her eyes and made out a stranger. Son immediately noticed the extraordinary heat in her body. This fever was far too severe to be an ordinary cold. When Soso regained awareness, she fearfully asked who he was. Son introduced himself as Jin Son of Taeyul. He said suspicious sounds during a night walk led him here. A righteous warrior could not ignore an apparent kidnapping. Privately, he thought he had played the savior perfectly. Soso thanked him and promised that her father would reward him. Before finishing, however, her illness violently returned. Son wanted to take her to a physician immediately. Soso explained that she could live only inside cold air. Any more movement would burn every blood vessel in her body. Son had never heard of an illness that burned the vessels. He listed each symptom she described inside his mind. Chronic illness and burning vessels became his key phrases. He remembered the great archive from his past life. He rapidly searched through countless memorized records. He had read many medical texts in the Murim Alliance archive. Their lines and illustrations returned vividly to his mind. The correct record emerged from among the others. The answer lay inside the Book of Panaceas. The legendary physician Gong Yakchun had written it. The book described rare cases inherited from Hua Tuo. Soso's burning heat was not a symptom of disease. It was a special constitution present from birth. Son realized the girl possessed the Sun constitution. Son had finally found a way to save Soso. He began explaining everything she needed to know before the procedure. The archives contained a legendary, similar case. It concerned a woman born with the Great Lunar Constitution. That constitution carried her to the absolute peak of ice arts. In exchange, she could never bear a child. The woman found the divine healer of life and death. She asked him to change the constitution given at birth. The healer discovered how to transform extreme yin and extreme yang. For Soso's Sun constitution, the process could be reversed. However, she would need a specially prepared pill every day. Once transformed, she could never return to her original constitution. She also needed daily energy circulation to balance the powerful medicine. Son could teach her only the Taeyul mind arts. That choice would prevent her from learning any other inner energy art. Soso said she had never wanted to become a warrior. She only wished to watch flowers bloom in spring. She wanted summer fans and autumn boat rides. She dreamed of embracing her family whenever she pleased. She wanted to hold the hand of the man she loved. One day, she hoped to have children and grow old with them. That ordinary life was all she had ever wanted. She was born into immense wealth as the Wang family's only daughter. Yet she had never tasted the happiness others took for granted. Son silently accepted her determination. At that moment, the kidnappers' true masters reached the cabin. Son drew his sword and stepped between them and the girl.
He stopped the first blow with a violent clash. The kidnapper's leader carefully studied the young man. If the Wang family learned their identities, everything would become difficult. He therefore decided to kill them both here. The man used the second form of the Chang'un limitless sword arts. Son predicted its thrust and rising slash aloud. He described each step his opponent would take. He even mocked him for needing another half step. The attacker furiously struck again after having his technique read. He could not accept being overwhelmed by an unknown youth. The Namgung clan's sword had become helpless against its own user. Son admitted that his opponent had learned a few things. The man gathered all his strength into one final attack. The Chang'un limitless sword arts violently filled the cabin. He believed no one could predict this move. Son calmly advanced into the center of the attack. His sword instantly passed through the defense. His counter broke the technique at its precise weakness. The attacker's sword flew from his hands. He could not believe someone had toyed with his clan's art. Son laughed at his belief that Namgung's sword was invincible. He had used the sword-breaking form still unknown to the clan. With the threat gone, he returned to So-So. He carefully positioned the needles he had prepared. As treatment began, So-So looked at him with complete trust. The young girl asked whether she could call him brother. So-So had to chew the foul-tasting special pill every day. Son also taught her the recipe for preparing it. He trained her in the Taeyul mind arts to purge its toxins. Maintaining this routine would let her live normally. So-So carefully repeated her energy circulation. Son praised her success and declared his task complete. They could now return together to the Wang family home. So-So greeted the news with childlike delight. She asked Son to call her simply So-So. When Son habitually patted her head, he quickly apologized. Blushing, the young girl said she did not mind. Son relaxed and smiled at her answer. They needed to leave before her father waited any longer. The pair entered a path covered in pink petals. With every step, So-So marveled at the world's colors. For the first time in her life, she was seeing spring. Son wondered why this amazed her so deeply. Iron plates had sealed every window of So-So's frozen pavilion. She also wanted to try climbing mountains in autumn. As Taeyul's disciple, she could train until she managed it. She began dreaming of new experiences in summer as well. At last, they reached the Wang family's village. So-So immediately recognized the sign bearing her father's name. Excitedly, she pulled Son's arm and invited him inside. She said her father would hold a great feast for him. Branch managers from across the nation might even attend. The food would never end, and the music would never stop. Son, however, said he would go no farther. Meanwhile, Namgung-san demanded the token from the chief strategist. He feared his sister Sienna could not pass the brutal regular exam. Only 500 among thousands of candidates passed each term. The chief strategist had never promised to give her the token. Someone more talented had received it before Sienna was tested. Namgung-san refused to believe such a person existed. He insisted that the chief strategist had made a mistake. The old man calmly sipped his tea. He sharply asked whether the token had merely been left in his care. He reminded Namgung-san that he owed no explanation. Namgung-san reluctantly apologized. The chief strategist sensed his family's worsening situation. Namgung's direct lineage now feared even the regular exam. Clan duties were strictly divided between direct and branch lineages. The direct lineage carried its traditions and martial arts. The branch lineage managed finances and external affairs. Its Chang'un Merchant Guild had grown increasingly powerful. The power of Namgung's direct lineage was weakening as a result. Namgung-san needed the admission token for his family. He asked the chief strategist who had received it. The old man studied him for a long time without answering. At the village gate, Soso did not understand Son's farewell. She asked him to come inside with her. Her disappearance had thrown all of Hefei into chaos. Son said appearing now could cause dangerous misunderstandings. Soso insisted that nothing like that would happen. She desperately wanted to repay him for saving her. Son reminded her that she was now a true Taeyul disciple. Gaining a new junior sister was reward enough. Soso still struggled to accept their parting. Son told her to maintain her pills and energy circulation. Then he left the village before the crowd noticed him. The streets erupted when someone recognized Soso. News spread that Wang family Manor's daughter had returned. Soso silently watched her brother's fading trail. Son wondered what would happen if the Wang family never came. In that case, he would simply count the rescue as a good deed. At Taeyul, a young man demanded a moment of Sarian's time. As Sarian repeatedly refused, Son saw them from afar. As her senior brother, he wanted to inspect this persistent man. The young man refused to leave, even if he waited all night. Son's eyes suddenly hardened. He stepped forward and ordered the stranger to stop. He questioned why the man kept pressuring a woman who refused him. Sarian said Son had returned at the perfect moment. Son tried to recognize the face before him. The stranger also recognized Jin Son of Taeyul. Sarian asked where her senior brother had been. The visitor was Namgung-san, the awakened heavenly dragon. Son said he was leaving to greet the sect leader. Sarian thought their guest could wait a little longer. Everyone was surprised by Son's sudden concern for manners. Namgung-san watched him with a cold expression. Son calculated why such a powerful man had come. The admission token was the only difference from his past. He first entered the main building to see his father. He formally reported his return to Taeyul's leader. His father stared in surprise at this serious behavior. Son said his journey went well and took a seat. The leader welcomed sharing tea with him after so long. His father tried to object to the disrespectful behavior. Hong Meng allowed Son to sit comfortably. Warm tea softened the tension around the table. Son explained that he had rescued a kidnapped girl. To save her life, he taught her the Taeyul mind arts. He apologized for sharing its secrets without permission. He confessed now to prevent trouble if the Wang family arrived. Hong Meng said martial arts existed to help people. He assured Son that saving her was the righteous choice. Then he told the disciple that he was truly proud. Still, he wondered whether the Wang family offered a reward. Son said Taeyul's rising reputation was reward enough. He then rose to return to the waiting guest. Hong Meng admired his attitude. His father found the performance unbelievable and embarrassing. In the guest room, Namgung-san immediately demanded the token. He claimed it had belonged to him from the beginning. Son asked why the chief strategist had given it to him instead. He openly implied that Namgung-san had failed to persuade him. Perhaps he had chosen small Taeyul as an easier target. Namgung-san said Son knew exactly how to provoke people. Son replied that offense did not make his logic wrong. The awakened heavenly dragon was one of the academy's finest graduates. He wanted the token for his sister Xianhua's admission that year. In exchange, he offered the 7-colored treasure orb. The treasure could purchase a mansion with 99 rooms. Son immediately understood the direct lineage's desperation. Namgung-san wanted a quiet settlement for Taeyul's supposed benefit. Instead, those words intensified Son's hatred. Namgung protected his own family while ignoring everyone else's suffering. The Namgungs cried over scratches on their own hands. In the past, they had torn out the hearts of Son's comrades. Now Namgung-san threatened both Son's reputation and his sect. Son told him openly how deeply he looked down on Taeyul. He recalled how Iron Sword showed the same arrogance and suffered humiliation.
Enraged, Namgung-san demanded a duel with the token at stake. The decision to duel stunned Tae-yul's disciples.
Tension had risen constantly since Namgung-san arrived. Even so, Son fighting such a great hero frightened them. They remembered that he had already defeated Gai Qiuliang. He had also brought down the Blood Wolf Iron Sword. They therefore believed Son would win again. The young disciples cheered loudly for their senior brother. Son's father acknowledged how dramatically his son had improved. Yet Tae-yul's technique seemed no match for Namgung's martial arts. Namgung-san waited in the arena with complete confidence. His token faced the orb, celestial silk, and great origin elixir.
Namgung would use only the Changgung limitless sword arts.
He would limit his inner energy to 30% and show no mercy. At the signal to begin, both men reached for their swords. The spectators held their breath for the opening move. Namgung-san attacked with lightning speed. Son slipped sideways past the razor-sharp strike. A second slash immediately tore through the sky. Son raised his sword and met its force directly.
Namgung-san could not believe the successful defense. A boy not yet grown should not wield such a heavy technique. The pressure in Son's blade even numbed his arms. Son suddenly turned and launched a counterattack. Namgung admitted his skill exceeded expectations.
Then he released the Changgung limitless sword arts again. In his mind, the same miracle could not happen twice. Blue energy covered the arena and surged toward Son. Instead of retreating, Son entered the attack. He swiftly cut toward his opponent's wrist. Namgung's energy erupted like an enormous wave. The collision shook the entire Tae-yul estate. Namgung's supporters shouted that his defeat was impossible. The heavy blow hurled Son backward. His father marveled that even 30% held such power. Namgung-san charged straight at him with killing intent. The pressure brought Son's past life into perfect clarity. Dark battlefields returned before his eyes. The demonic cult's blades cut down his comrades. Back then, Son felt every strike in his own body. The Murim alliance had been crushed by defeat after defeat. His unit was the final living shield against the enemy. The Sojung squad had been assembled from every kind of outcast. In his past life, Son had captained that unit. He knew his comrades would die if he did not fight. So he took the incoming attacks upon himself. Every clash brought him face to face with death. However numerous his wounds, he never stepped back. He always threw himself onto the front line without hesitation. The fear and horror of killing had entered his bones. Those painful memories remained permanently carved into his mind. Now he would use all that experience as a foundation to rise. He refused to accept the same losses in this life. This time, he would protect family and comrades with his own hands. Resolve ignited in Son's eyes once more. He endured Namgung's attack and rolled across the ground. Certain of victory, his opponent extended his sword. Son rose and reminded him of the promise he had made. Namgung was supposed to use only the Changgung limitless sword arts. Yet he had just used the imperial sword arts. The broken promise carried their duel into a dangerous new stage.